introduce myself really quickly. I'm Christina, and I'm one of the portfolio managers on our NorCal startup banking team. So we work with companies from all different stages at SVB, anywhere from inception to IPO. Specifically, I will work with companies anywhere from inception to pre-Series A. We have so many various sectors at SVB. We're sector agnostic, ranging from software, hardware, finance, climate tech. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to connect with me after. But in the meantime, we have a great panel ahead and would love to introduce John over to introduce our other guest speakers. But thank you so much, and then we'll have a nice little lunch after this.
Thank you, Christina. First of all, thank you for your team. You've always been super hospitable to the Salesbricks team and all our guests. Super thankful for your hard work here. But for everybody in the room, I just want to first of all introduce, welcome you guys to this amazing fireside chat with two huge giants in the valley. A lot of experience, a lot of knowledge kind of crammed into their brains that we're going to try to extract today. But for the purposes of that, to understand who's in the room, I'd love to just ask a few questions. So would love to ask who in this room is founders? Who is sellers? So that was a trick question.
Founders, sellers, yeah.
Who's not founder / operator founding at a company? And then who's engineers? Who has a technical background? And then who of that technical background is in sales?
Isn't?
Is in sales.
Oh, is in sales.
Yeah. So that was a second attempt. So a little bit about myself, and I'm going to introduce the panel here. I was never destined to be a salesperson. In my previous experience of being an operator for a business, I was always in RevOps and sales ops, and that's a very critical role in a lot of these tech companies. We're the glue that puts everything together and helps the business generate revenue. But I always stood in the sidelines. So I had a courtside ticket, if you will, to the show around how revenue happens, and I would support the people who actually make revenue happen, typically customer success and sales account executives. But when I started this company 4 years ago, Salesbricks, I never knew that I would have to be on the front line selling. And when you are a founder and a salesperson, which that should always be the case, it's a very humbling experience to understand how, I'm not supposed to cuss, but how hard it is to sell and to tell your story, and also to understand how your customers, the market is consuming your product, but also consuming the knowledge that they need in order to bet their careers on the product that they're going to buy from you all. So I just want to say very, very much a thank you to everybody who's a founder here. It's a very hard journey. And one of the things I've learned in my journey is to constantly go to these types of events, mingle with the same journey as you, because psychologically it only helps. So thank you everybody for building the next big companies in America. But before I continue to tell my story, I'd love to just pass the mic to these two fine gentlemen. I would like to have them kind of walk through their backgrounds, their experiences, so that we could set up the fireside chat so that they could share with you some of the learnings that they've seen in the past, but also today around how the world is changing in terms of how people consume and buy software. So I'm going to start off with Bill.
Yeah, great to see so many founders here. Love working with founders. So I was former CMO CRO at Slack. I joined at about 50 people, so joined very early. I was kind of the first marketer and worked with Stuart and the rest of the team to kind of grow through an incredible experience there. I was CMO at Zendesk, same thing, joined about 50, 60 people, kind of, as a CMO, kind of built up that team, helped them go through an IPO. And then before that, I was with Salesforce. I was SVP of marketing. And I loved all of it. I love the go-to-market side. And today I work with founders like you guys, just help accelerate the growth, help with the go-to-market, the marketing. I'm very customer-centric. That's kind of my style. I like more modern go-to-market engines. So I was excited to talk a lot today about our buyer topic. Want to go next up?
There's no one left, so if somebody told me 30 years ago I would be sitting here talking about how buyers buy and marketing best practices, I would have said, you're completely crazy. I got my career started in M&A not a really long time ago, and then found my way into this crazy new place called SaaS. I've done it all. I'm not a, what was it, the Death Star CRO? I'm always the encouraging CRO, CMO, CPO, so I've done each of those jobs. That led me up to the point where I tried to retire in the fall of 2022. 6 weeks into that exercise, my wife, who was not retired, said, I'm going to kill you. You got to figure something out. And then November 9th, 2022 happened. And that was when ChatGPT came out. And I was like, this is it. So that brings me up to today. And I've really spent the last 2.5 years thinking about how people buy, but specifically how marketers can do a better job of reacting to needs in the marketplace. So I'll speak about that a little bit here today. The other thing I would just mention is that things are changing so quickly that the expertise I hope we share with you guys today is going to be obsolete in a few weeks. So I'm so glad you guys are here, especially as founders, because you need to be on top of it. And by the way, sometimes this is where you got to be to get that information.
Thanks, guys, for the intro. I'm going to try to make this as collaborative as possible, these types of sessions. So I'm going to ask a few questions before we start to ask these guys questions. But raise your hand if you guys are consumers or customers of some type of ride-sharing app, like Uber, Lyft. Continue to raise your hand if you've been frustrated because that Uber took longer than what the display says on your app. Raise your hand if you actually canceled it and tried to do it again because you were so impatient. So what's really interesting is you guys are consumers and you also are sellers of the product. What's really interesting in the B2C market is the B2C market has been conditioning you guys all to be relentless and have high demands as consumers, right? I think we can all agree with that. But what's really hard today to buy software, I think. And with the advent of technology and Moore's Law, things move faster, your demands as consumers greatly increase. How do we bring and how do we survive this world where your modern day buyers, your B2B buyers, are acting the same way that you guys act as consumers? And so today, with the advent of GPT, which I think Doug mentioned, and a lot of the tools out there, it is forcing a lot of these buyers to be more relentless, have a higher expectation, and be served on demand. And so as we start to ask these guys some questions of what's going on and how do we survive this, I want you guys to always circle back with you guys are consumers, you have the point of view as a consumer, and how your buyers will buy your product. All right. So I'm gonna just kick it off here to ask both of you guys, like, what is a new generation of a buyer today? Like, is it an age? Is it the type of company that they're working at? I'd love to just hear kind of a definition and kind of your point of view of that.
There's nobody else, so I'm gonna go first.
Yeah.
Good, okay. I think, Jonathan, you nailed it out of the gate, which was to put you guys in the rubric of being the consumer. And I would say the difference between a B2C and a B2B consumer, this has nothing to do with AI, honestly. We have become so used to, as B2C consumers, a really lovely experience. And we have become upset and jaded about poor B2B experience. So we need to start there, okay? And I will tell you, I'm gonna get to some of the punchlines here. The winners of the experience with the new buyers are going to be the people that create amazing buying experiences. And I hope we get to the point where we sort of talk about what an unamazing buying experience is. But I'll give you an example. You go to a B2B website and you immediately get a chatbot, or you get something that keeps you away from some portion of the buying experience that you really want. We're going to talk about AI, I think, at some point here. AI SDRs is an example of what a poor experience that is. You will lose. If you are about capturing contact information, and you are about trying to get as much as you can out of that conversation instead of how much you can give, you will lose. And I'm going to give you the reason. It is because of AI. Not because AI is showing up on websites. It is because the majority of buyers by next year will start their search on AI. And believe me, they're getting everything they want on AI. So when they get to your site, they better have a world-class experience. So if you're arguing over how many pixels away your hero panel is from the top, how much buffer you have, and where the trial button goes, You've already lost. So the new generation of buyers is you. You're using AI every day. And so your expectation from the point that you get answers with a prompt to the moment you get to a website, that's the place you need to think about. We're not even talking about outbound right now. We're just going to think in terms of that immediate buying experience. That's my definition of a new buyer. It's all of you.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I was really fortunate to work at Slack, Zendesk, Salesforce, but 15 years before that, I was all in consumer, and it was all online consumer. And when I came over to B2B, I was just kind of shocked. I was like, I was buying software. I'm like, this really sucks. Like, I would hear about some company, I'd go to their site, and it would be like, all right, let me try it. Like, no, you got to fill out this giant form. All the content was gated with more forms, you know. Sales would originally like reach out to me and try to sell me, or actually I'd be put over to an SDR. Now I know what an SDR is. And they would just try to qualify me. Do you have budget? Do you have this? And then 2 weeks later, I could talk to a salesperson. 2 weeks later, I'd have a demo. And then 2 months later, I'd actually be able to maybe use a little trial version of the product. But it was a crappy experience, right? And after I bought it, all the salespeople would run away. You know, I was assigned, I'd had like 8 people buying me steak dinners. Now they all ran. And now I was assigned like 1/1000th of a customer success manager, right? To help me use this super hard to use, confusing product. And if I did need support, you know, that link was buried. It was just like the worst experience. And I think ultimately, you know, how is the modern buyer changing? Well, we're just all people, right? Even if you work for a B2B company, we're just people. You know, how do you buy stuff, right? Like, go to Amazon, you read the reviews, right? You want to see it, you want to experience value quickly. You know, a recommendation from a friend or a colleague is going to be really important to you. You're searching for this information ahead of time. There's a lot of stats out there that 90% of the research happens before you even talk to the company or reach out to them, right? It's a very different model, and it's something that like kind of frustrates me sometimes. Is like I said earlier, I work with a lot of founders, and like they're amazing. The products are just wow, like blow my mind. Like these AI tools that you are coming out with are just fantastic. But then sometimes the go-to-market model will be a relic from the past. It'll be like, let's hire salespeople, let's do press releases, run events, sell top down into your organization, and that's just I don't think that's how the modern buyer works anymore.
So I want to drill down into 2 topics I think I heard from both of you, or that was strong. It sounds like the hunger for knowledge is very common across this generation, and even in the past, where you kind of stated, or again, Salesforce, Zendesk, Slack.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about like what is that information and why is that important in the buying experience?
Yeah, people just want to know, right? You know, a lot of times your career is tied to these decisions, right? So you have to do the research, and you want to understand, like, what is this company? Are they helpful? Are people getting value out of it? You know, and I just think like today, like that research is happening, but now it's all happening in AI, right? And everybody's going to their favorite LLM, or ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, you know, fill in the blank. And of course, these LLMs now are all indexing G2 Crowd and Reddit and Trust Radius, right? So they're looking at essentially the most trusted information that they want, right? Which is just, are people having a good experience with it? Are they getting time to value? So I think like that information people are always going to want to get. And I think the old model of this happens by talking to a salesperson is just kind of dated. And if you put that as part of the process, like a lot of times, sometimes the only way you can use the product is you have to talk to a salesperson first, right? There's no concept of a POG or a product qualified lead. It's all comes in as a lead, and MQL kind of goes through the traditional funnel. So I just think like that's radically changing.
Interesting. In your experience, both of you, in call it like 10 years ago, the average buyer was, in my mind, kind of, I was there, at the time, were CTOs, heads of sales who were very, they were very experienced. They had a lot of tenure behind them. Has that changed in terms of the types of people who are actually having the credit card and has purchasing power today?
I'd say a couple things. I echo everything that Bill would say, and I think it's our fault. Bill, we created those playbooks, if you recall. So we're complaining about the very thing, monster we created. I think the buyers have shifted. I think it's a very astute and good question, Jonathan, because I would agree there was a point 10 years ago where we were experiencing buying cycles with the C-suite. And I know this because every sales organization I work with, it's the, just the constant drumbeat from the CRO, sell up, sell up, sell up. Well, that means they're not showing up. So funny enough, I think it's former Jonathan's, if you will. So it's a lot of the rev ops, more ops. Depends on the SaaS product you're selling, but I think you're seeing a lot of senior managers. And by the way, I think they have a lot of experience both with buying products and with installing products. And therefore, they're very hard to sell to. They know their stuff. I would argue, in fact, they're harder to sell to than the C-suite were, because the C-suite, they were thinking in terms of risk. I also have to come back to one of the other questions you asked before to talk about what do people want when they encounter a brand. And the way that I think about this is the simplest rubric I can give you is they're looking for three things. What job are you going to do for me? Okay, that's a job to be done. Everybody know the job to be done framework. You're not selling drills, you're selling holes. The more marketing, sorry, marketing guys here, the more marketing you put in front of that, that's bad. Get as demonstrative as you can, as fast as you can. What will the product do for you? How much is it going to cost? What am I going to get out of it? And what's my risk to my career? I completely agree. These are in some cases, career risky moves. If your website doesn't do that, if your messaging doesn't do that, change those things. Because guess what? The large language models are going to strip all that stuff out. They're going to make sure that the person that they're doing a good job with the prompt, that person's going to get a crystal clear view of what your brand is doing.
So I want to actually drill into the make you look good, what job are you going to be performing? It kind of reminds me of my first experience buying a 6-figure piece of software. And you guys both coincidentally know what Lithium Technologies was. That's where I came from three companies ago. But my boss, he was the CRO of the company. He said, "Hey, John, we have a problem. All the data is sitting in spreadsheets. I know it's your first month in the business, but you need to go solve it for me, right?" And I said, "Okay, what do I need to do?" He says, "Go buy a BI solution." And it was the very first time I bought 6 figures of a piece of software that I think, to your point, my career is on the line. If I fuck that up, I'm
not supposed
gone.
to swear.
I know. We have some editors later on. Sorry, Lottie, I got a warning from her last time. But I purchased a 6-figure product, and the next thing I did was I told my wife, I think I might have to look for another job. This implementation is taking 6 months. And people were anxious about this 6-figure purchase. And I think I was 25 at the time too, so it was new to me. But the moment we went live was a phenomenal, magical moment for my career. My product that I implemented went on the eStaff agenda. So every week they did the eStaff call. My dashboards were showing in live stream. Like if somebody closed a deal, it automatically refreshed. And what that did to me as a buyer was now I had to go have 5 more departments get more access to this product. It was called Domo at the time. And we literally 5x'd our spend on that thing. But nobody cared because it produced the outcomes that what I was asked of. And I also got a raise, and I also got a promotion after that. So if your product helps people get promoted or do their job phenomenally better, you should use that as a way to, in your contract when you sell, because that's very powerful. I think people's lives are on the line in these types of purchases. And it's really important to use that as a way to sell your product and to, change the outcomes of, where their current state is or the problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah, I would maybe add to that. Where I see a lot of this coming from is that I think we all agree here, right? The B2B buyer journey has changed. Does anyone disagree with that, right? All right, we all agree on that, right? The issue I see is the B2B metrics have not changed, right? So if I were to guess, a lot of you are looking at a dashboard that says leads, opportunities, pipeline, closed deals, right? But is that really reflective of the buyer journey, right? So to me, I think the metrics we need to change and need to be focused on. And the good news is a lot of you guys are early on. I've talked to a lot of people in the crowd here, your founders, your early stage of YC. You need to be thinking about metrics like daily active users, product qualified leads, time to value, how simple is the product to use, how fun is the product to use, your net promoter score, your transactional CSAT. These are very, very different experience PLG type metrics than the traditional old style, right? And when you only look at old style metrics, When you start hiring your marketing team, when you start hiring your sales team, they're going to push for things that are not very customer centric. They're going to push to gate everything. They're going to push to put the chatbot. They're going to reach out to people before they're ready. They're going to do all these unsavory things. And it's because I think like the metrics drive people. They drive the incentives. So I would just say like, for any of you that are founders here, really think about that long and hard. What are my North Star metrics? I know it really helped us out at Slack. Early on, we said our 3 primary metrics were daily active users, net promoter score, and ARR. We did have a little bit of ARR. We had a little, funnel there, but a lot of it, everyone in the company, and these were shared metrics, by the way. This was not like, oh, the customer success team gets the net promoter score. Everyone did. We were all thinking about how do we delight people? How do we reduce friction? How do we improve value, right? How do we get people, daily active users, to actually use the product, not just register and never use it, right? But hey, we all get paid, we get comped, we get incentivized, we get bonused on these kind of newer set of metrics. So I think that's a great opportunity for everyone here.
Just to double down on that, I was in a stage 2 accelerator where the actual case study was a screenshot of Slack metrics around like every month, how did the amount of messages sent actually increase over time for that org and for that user. And I think it really doubles down on this focus on adoption and what the buyer, first of all, what the buyer journey is, and then what the adoption and the success of the product is for the business.
Yeah.
I want to kind of change topics a little bit and talk about a topic that actually was very controversial in my last Fireside Chat 2 weeks ago. I don't know if any of you guys were there, but there was a question that came out from one of the audience members. He said, when do I actually start automating this annoying job that I need to do as a founder? And I think the job was kind of like a SDR type, like, how do I automate the top of the funnel? And when I was talking to you earlier, Doug, you mentioned like that's actually against my religion. And then you also talked about like anti-SDR, AI SDR. I want to drill down a little bit more and talk about like, why are you against that? Is there a specific stage in a business where you're kind of against that, or did I get that right, that assumption about it?
You got it right, and I think he's hoping Bill and I will argue. Unfortunately, I don't think Bill and I will argue. We're so like-minded on all these topics. I'm just sitting here shaking my head at everything he's saying. But there's a couple things in there. I think the first thing is this. I'm a founder as well. I didn't mention like what I'm doing now, but I'm a founder. And that came very late in my career. And I advise founders constantly. And I have to say, you cannot abstract yourself from the difficulty of growing your business. And so I phrase this to you, Jonathan, as you got to eat your vegetables. So who's going to get my first 3 customers? You are. Who's going to cold call? You are. Who's going to set up the website? You are. Right? Now, look, we can argue the nuances of whether it makes sense for you to set up your website, or whether, like, if your co-founder is the seller, great, but somebody better be doing those things. And the reason that I say that is because you have to understand your market, and there's no better way to do that than to actually get your phone call hung up on. There's something about having the experience of trying to build out the motion that makes a big difference. I'm going to leap over to AI SDR for a second, because that was the second thing that was brought up. So the first thing I'd say is eat your freaking vegetables. I swear every time I say that, okay? I won't for this one. AI SDR, it is the antithesis of everything that is wrong right now with AI marketing. Because, back to my original statement, how do you create a world-class experience for your buyers every single time they engage you? Anybody had experience with an AI SDR lately? Raise your hands. You're full of it. All of you have, right? All of you have been spammed. Who's gotten pitch slapped on LinkedIn? Come on, seriously, all of us. I'm getting 8 a day. How do you feel about that experience? It's awful. I mean, it sends me into a fury, and I have kids. So think about that in terms of, so we're going to leap from eat your own vegetables to AI SDR, because guess what? That's eating your own vegetables. Create your own LinkedIn pitch. See how people react to it. Don't put it in a sequence. See how they react to your messaging. Because the core thing that's going on right now is that Bill and I built these playbooks, and now people are putting AI on top of it. And if you use as your core goal, I want to create a world-class experience for my consumers, you will not hire an AI SDR.
Yeah, and I'll say something controversial. We'll try to pick up the pace here. John said you should all be selling. I disagree with that. I think there are some people here that are product people that just aren't
We
good.
can cut his mic.
All right, hear me out on this. It's the same thing in PR. Like some people are great PR people, right? And I work with founders, and it's like, should we all common question? Should I spend $5K a month on a retainer for a PR firm? And the people that are like, they're tweeting every second of the day, they're out there, I'm like, yes, do it. But a lot of founders are product people, right? And that's not what they do. They're not comfortable with it. A lot of people here, some people are very extroverted, love to sell, some people are not, and that's fine, right? So the whole SDR thing, the premise is on, do you want to build an outbound model where you go cold call people out and sell them, or do you want to build an inbound model where people come to you, right? And the whole PLG model, product-led growth, which by the way, 72% of new AI, YC company or just in general startups are using, is founded on, we're going to deliver great experiences. They're going to come to us. We're going to have people have a great experience. They're going to recommend to others, right? So yes, I mean, there's a part of being a founder that, you're fundraising, you're doing other things. There is a sales element there. But I would not say that, hey, just because I have to be sales, that kind of takes you down that salesy path, right? And I think we've all been around salesy people that you're like, ugh, this feels gross, or they're pushing me too hard, or if you can kind of switch that around and go, hey, we want to be an inbound model. We want to have people come to us, have such a great experience that they recommend us, that they write up great reviews on G2Crowd. They write up great reviews on Trust Rate. It's like, oh, wow, now the AAs are indexing that content. And when the people searching it, now they're getting recommended. You create this flywheel. You have a freemium model. You have quick time to value. You have a high net promoter score. There are different models than just going the classic outbound sales. So yes, I don't think everyone has to do sales as a founder.
That's a good approach. I think that's a fair kind of point of view.
He's wrong. That's okay. Well, actually,
We got to say something.
yeah, no, we're two really nice guys, so we can't help it ourselves. But here's what I'd say. I think Bill there's nuance to anything we're saying. We're on a panel. We're trying to communicate to a bunch of really busy people that are trying to make really big, serious decisions. So I will always oversimplify. And as my wife would say, that's just the way my brain works, right? I'm a simple guy at the end of the day. But here's the thing. Yes, I agree, Bill. I think there are nuances in this. And if you are amazing at social media, lean into that. What I'm trying to say at the end of the day is understand the 3 C's as well as you can with whatever activities you need to do to get there. So let me simplify this for you. Your customer, your competition, and your company. And whatever your weak spot is there, you better fill the thing. And so for me, when I'm talking to founders, I'm like, if you are a technical person, you need to understand how hard it is to sell. Now, whether that is you selling or not, by the way, I've been sold to by technical founders, and good God, man, it's so painful. You feel bad for them. It's almost like a puppy selling. You're like, oh no, you're good. You're doing that's good. That's good. That's a good discovery question. It's not fun, but it's so valuable for them. So I agree, Bill. There's nuances to this, but I would say wherever you're weak on the 3 C's, actually that's where I would lean in. I would go lean in on that piece. So whatever that means, selling, coding, no, bad. Sorry, I shouldn't code, but wherever you're weak, lean in.
So I want to switch to another topic, but very similar, very much aligned to the SDR topic. One of the experiences I've had recently as a founder is obviously I buy software for the business, and I hear a lot of SDRs who are ideally new graduates, 1 or 2 years of experience, telling me how I should do my job, because that's how they get paid, right? They need to get a meeting with me or someone in my team. But it was really a challenge where, they didn't really have this experience, but they are actually pushing a product that solves this problem. I think about 6 years ago, this worked really well because there was this sales-led motion kind of going on. But I think nowadays, there's this kind of sales assist motion where, to your point, Gardner says, 80 or 85% of the buying job has been completed once they contact their vendor. How are people evolving to this in today's day and age, and especially when the new gen people have a credit card, have access to a budget, and can make a quick decision, but yet they have to go through this long, tenuous, strenuous process of buying?
Yeah, isn't it ironic that the least tenured person, usually the SDR, is the first person who makes contact with your buyers, right? There's something wrong with that. I've always thought the brand is the sum of every single experience they have with your company, right? And if you give a bad experience, right, working with a tenured, founder, they just don't understand it. That's a horrible experience. So I think as far as like where the model's evolving, the biggest one I see is, I mentioned product-led growth earlier. There's product-led growth, there's sales-led growth, and the sweet spot I think is product sales growth, right? So the idea there is as you grow and scale, you send everyone into the product first, right? So don't gate them and make them forced to go through a demo, make them forced to talk to a salesperson, get them into the product, see value. But then from there, you leverage like a product qualified lead concept, right? You look at usage, activity, you also layer in like, whoa, was this someone that just came to us from Amazon or Adobe? Like, whoa, that's a good one, right? Now we're gonna have sales reach out to them. And depending on how you do it, like one of the things we would do at Slack is I was a big Net Promoter Score guy, NPS. And I would always do NPS not as a sample for a customer that was using it, but to every single individual. And when you had that, you could do things like, okay, now when sales reaches out, let's reach out to the one that scored us 10 out of 10 and said, wow, this transformed my life. Like that person is much more likely to introduce you to procurement, to introduce you to another team that might buy, right? Classic land and expand. So I think like, how people are, buying, how the vectors they come in, the go-to-market model you use are all really critical.
So there's this product growth lever you mentioned. One of the experiences I've had within Salesbricks is like 80% of our inbounds are actually coming from our customers.
Yeah.
And their experience buying from our customers. So just a TLDR, Salesbricks powers the first ever B2B SaaS checkout. We process over 6,000 transactions per quarter. And for us, like we have to maintain this level of the product that we need to be proud of. Back in the day, I think about 15 years ago, like there was only 2 choices, so it's either X or Y.
Yeah.
But now there's like 50 other choices in a particular industry. How is like having product excellence critical in kind of the growth of a business today?
Yeah, I think there's some. This is the challenge. Trying to speak to a group of people whose products are probably spread across PLG, SLG, whose product maturity is spread across the Jeffrey Moore curve, right? So it's hard to be singular. So I would say this. The first thing is this. If you are in this, by the way, show of hands, people know who Jeffrey Moore is. Okay. All right. Jeffrey Moore is, I'm going to have to tell you who Jeffrey Moore is now. Jeffrey Moore defined modern maturity cycles for product life cycles. So as an example, innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. You've heard those terms before, okay? That describes how people think about your product, okay? Let's call that a category. How many people have quantum computers in their homes right now? Great. That's an example of, there we go, quantum computing in the house right now. 1 out of 40 people.
Does the spouse count?
Yeah. We might have the same wife, I think. Check this out.
I hope not.
So how many people here have an electric car? Okay, great. We just went from innovators to early majority. How many people here have a cell phone? Don't bother, right? If you don't have a cell phone, by the way, if you didn't raise your hand, you're a laggard. Okay, the reason I mention all of that and give you these examples is your product always, so to go back to Bill's one, your product always needs to be excellent. That is the most important thing. But as you sort of migrate across these stages, your sales and marketing tactics have to change. So as an example, everybody with a cell phone, frankly, I think we're all very brand loyal, but it's very commoditized, right? Like the latest version of the iPhone, you're like, I don't care, right? Innovators, it's very different, right? You are finding your market, and this is where I would sort of get back to how people are buying and how people are selling. So in that innovator space, you better be out there. They're not coming to you, right? And if you're, Bill's giving me this look, I can see the side eye from Bill. Bill's like, I don't know about this guy. Here's what I would say. You've got to go find your market. And that's why I said go eat your vegetables. But the other piece is this, how things are evolving, back to the original question. How things are evolving is that AI and vibe coding and publicly available data are changing our ability to understand when customers have pain. And when they have pain, they should be hearing from us if our brand matches that. In other words, if our value prop matches that brand. And that's what I mean when I say eating the vegetables. You've got to understand how to get to those innovators early on with the right message at the right time. And that's how things are evolving. It is less abstract. I love NPS, I agree, but that's very much in the early majority, very much in the early majority phase when you have enough customers coming through, probably before that. But my point is, folks, things are changing because you've got better data about when customers are experiencing pain. And you can have fantastic outbound motions without necessarily having a fantastic outbound founder. If you know when they're in pain, you can reach them at the right time. That's how things are changing.
Yeah, and maybe I'd add to that. Look, most people here, I'm assuming, are building an AI variation, type product. And the good news is you can build these quicker than ever. The bad news is there's going to be a dozen other people that can do the exact same thing, right? So when Jonathan asked around product excellence, one thing I would just be really careful about is I think a lot of times people get in the mindset of product excellence means like we have to just have tons of features, right? Tons, we got to build most product team, product roadmap, this feature, this feature, this feature, this feature. In my experience, I have found that the B2B companies that win more are the ones that produce products that were simple and easy to use, right? Like for me, that is product excellence. That trumps features. In fact, the more features you add, by definition, the harder it gets to use, right?
Well, we have examples, by the way. We have examples. Seriously, that would really help, I think. Do you have one that you would say is like...
Yeah, I mean, so I know, like, for instance, at Slack, we constantly, we would go back and refresh existing features that already were there and just make them easier as opposed to building a net new feature. I've worked with a lot of companies where we'll put a simple thumbs up, thumbs down if they go through the onboarding experience. How simple was it to use the product? How fun is it? A little teaser, I think we were talking about this earlier with Slack. Our most popular integration was not Salesforce, Marketo, HubSpot. It was Giphy. People love doing Giphy.
Yeah.
They love the feature of the emojis, right? Like we get caught up in like B2B mindset. Oh, they need this, triple regression forecasting module, right? A lot of times it's a hard to use product and they're off. They're checking something else out. So, I would argue again, you can measure these things. You can measure how simple it is, how fun it is to use. Fun is a big one. Again, like, consumerization of the enterprise. If you can make your tool fun to use, people tend to talk about it, right? Do a little firework explosion after they accomplish whatever the first thing they were doing, Use some witty language. Like there's so many ways you can make your product fun, but simple and fun are really important.
So we introduced this confetti after you buy software, and I got like 15 LinkedIn messages from the actual buyer of our customers.
That's awesome.
Saying I love to chat because I want that same experience for us.
And I just want to anchor the audience and love those examples. And by the way, NPS is relevant at all times. I'm not sure I'm hedging on that, but it's actually more important in a PLG motion than it's ever been. But I would say, I'm curious, is there a example of a current product? And I'll give one, and that's Gamma. I don't know if you guys are using Gamma these days. Gamma users out there? This room will have raised their hand completely in 6 months. Gamma is one of the most amazing products I've encountered. And it is very simply a tool that allows you to render PowerPoints from prompts, PowerPoints meaning Gammas, or create a website on the fly. And so it is so easy to use, and you guys are going to use this afterwards. You can send the check to my house. I live in Oakland. It is the most amazing product. But that, to me, and I'm hopeful there's maybe another product more people use that.
Yeah, I think Lovable's another great one.
Lovable's another
right?
one.
Like insane how quickly you reach 100 million. Even the name of the company, right?
Yeah.
Fun, love, right? It's easy to go through, quick time to value. I think there's lots of examples there. I would just say, look, you don't need to build software like Cisco and Oracle did, right? It is not just a million features and the traditional outbound, top-down model. There's so many different ways to go to market now. And the awesome thing is like you're all early. Like I've worked with late stage ones. I've worked with like really big $1 trillion companies and companies that are at Series D, E. And it's like, it is a 2-year change management exercise. You're all early. But I will say is whatever go-to-market model you choose is going to get cemented. And it is so hard to change pricing later on. It's so hard to move off an SLG model. So just whatever it is, like spend some cycles there, right? Like just really explore. There's different models. There's like you can do AI, SEO, and outbound. You can do that really well too. I'm not saying you can't do that, but just make sure you intentionally choose one that you believe in, because once you get it, as you start going, seed A, B, C, it'll be really hard to change.
Okay, so I'm getting the time warning from my boss here. I want to just do a quick lightning round and just one sentence of a prediction or a suggestion or advice that you would give the room of founders here. And then we're going to actually spend some time and go around the room and have you guys ask questions here. So I'll start with Doug. What's your prediction or advice?
I'm going to see if I contradict Bill here. I don't know if Bill's answer. 1 year from now, your chatbot will be your website.
Can you repeat that, please?
1 year from now, your chatbot will be your website. You still have a website. But 1 year from now, your chatbot will mostly be, your website will mostly be about your chatbot. In other words, you will judge the performance of your website based on the performance of your chatbot.
Very provocative. All right.
I don't know how long it'll take, 2 or 3 years, but I'm pretty sure at some point AI agents will be buying the software, right? Just as they book our vacations and personal life, right? So I think we all kind of have to get ahead of that curve as well.
All right, mine's very biased that in the near future, software sales will not require a Word document. Order form. So that's our huge bet.
That sounds magical to me, by the way. I would love
Magical.
that world, yes.
Awesome. All right, so I think Lonnie's in the back here. We're gonna go around the room, ask some questions. I'll let Lonnie do the choosing.
Hi, thank you for this. This is really fun. And I'm Jyoti. I'm a healthcare founder. My question is, I understood that with all these this hour-long discussion that it's hard to sell. And there's Alexa and all these chatbots answering medical-related questions while we spend time to build knowledge-based, knowledge graph-based technical products. There's a tough competition there because those generic softwares are muddying up the waters. So how should we wade through that muddied waters and sell to the not so knowledgeable customer and still have enough market penetration? Sorry, that was wrong.
No, that wasn't long. And Jyoti, it's a great question. Alexa is not your competitor, it is your model.
Sorry?
Alexa is not your competitor, it is your model. People are encountering Alexa because it is easier to deal with Alexa than, I'm sorry to be your company, but getting a hold of your data.
But the problem for me would be, it's not so much that I'm competing with Alexa. I know Alexa, the amount of information or the quality of information that comes from Alexa is very inferior to what we're building. But then it's muddying up waters. It's taking away
The
the
medium is
trust
the
value,
message.
adoption value.
What I'm saying is your standard is to be as performative as Alexa in terms of the ease of accessing the information. And as a founder, you're always driving for that. I know, not easy, but it's the truth, right? This is, again, it's changing so fast and it is so hard to do these things. But as the founder, you're wasting a serious amount of capital if you are worried about Alexa and if you were not trying to match Alexa. Here's quantum computing guy, here we go.
I have two questions, right? One for Doug and one for Bill. The first one to Doug is, you did mention something about search. Search is dead right now, so I don't see how search will make any difference or impact in the next max 6 months.
I swear, he's not a plant. I love this question.
So that's one. So for Bill, you didn't mention the metrics. All the metrics you mentioned are like obsolete right now, in terms of the B2B space. My question to both of you is, who or what is the new decision maker when it comes to buying?
Okay, I'll start just because the first, go ahead.
No,
Was there
that's
more?
it. That's
Okay,
it.
I'm gonna start, I actually feel like there's a Jonathan question there too, like who the buyer is gonna be, but I'll start just because you mentioned SEO. If I said search, what I really meant to say, and by the way, 5 years as CMO and at one point had a product for an SEO platform. So I'm a huge believer in the power of SEO. And to say that it's dead is correct directionally, but functionally not true yet. It will be dead shortly, and it's going to be dead shortly because of large language models. And I heard the stat on the percentage of buyers that have done all the research before. I think it's 80 or 90%. You're going to have to go to 62%, right? That was Gartner's number. I'm sure Gartner's got a good number, and that's 90%, and I believe it. But what I'm saying is that people are still conditioned to do research ahead of time. They're just simply shifting where the research is occurring. So call it GEO or SEO, so generative engine optimization or SEO. People are still starting with a search.
Yeah, you asked who the modern buyer is. I think increasingly it's moving to the end user. You know, that's a long trend we've seen away from CTO, CAO to the actual user. And to further some of my earlier points, if you have a PLG or even product sales growth model, and Jonathan did not say this, but it's a good example of like why this works. Like what they do is awesome, right? Like basically what they do is they allow you to do a seamless checkout. Every year, the amount that people are willing to buy goes higher and higher via self-service. But even if you have a sales-led growth organization, everything can get funneled through that. I'm saying this because I think it's a cool solution. He didn't ask me to do that. But that's a really good example of how like product-led growth, product sales growth, or when you believe in things like NPS. I know you said those were all obsolete. Were you saying my previous metrics I said were obsolete, or everything I said was obsolete? I'm not sure.
So, in our company, we just build a clear agent that figures out what we need and then does the search on our behalf.
Oh yeah.
Now, if you're not wired to communicate with our agent, you don't even know what we need. So that's why I did ask the question, who is the new decision maker?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I'd say, maybe my prediction, right? Like AI agents will be doing a lot of the buying on behalf of, B2B organizations in the future. But I still think like the AI agents.
We just
or right now. That's awesome. Right now. I think there'll come a little time, normal adoption, as we talked about the adoption curve, before it goes from a small group to all groups. But yeah, I absolutely agree. That is a big trend that's happening.
Bill, remember when I said the half-life of our knowledge here was 6 weeks? It's like a half an hour right now, to your point.
Great question.
Thank you so much. It's been a very insightful panel. Like resonated a lot. So I work with freight forwarders and some are like automation workflows to them. One of the things that I really want to try and implement is this low barrier to kind of actually using the product. But what we see is like I started off with doing top-down pricing, which means like takes a bit more longer sales cycle. I've always kind of grappled with the idea of it's kind of very easy integration because thankfully a lot of people in my industry, they don't have too many ERP systems, so it's relatively easy to get integrated and set them up. But then I'm just thinking the sales model, marketing model is also tied to the financial model, like to just kind of get them straight away. So like how do you draw this line?
I'll start and maybe you can respond. But I think there was an objective I heard there was like how do you distribute your product easily, and how do you easier user adopt it easily. I think there's a people, process, and a product kind of thing you need to solve first in order for that to happen. You need the people to genuinely believe that that's how you're going to distribute your product. So whatever decisions that they make in your business is always oriented to that goal. The product has to be very easy to implement and understand. So that's your EPD team that's building out an incredible, easy to use product. And then the process is like, what motion do you want to do? Like, is it good or what is it? Sales led, sales assist, self-service, and you have to invest in the tooling to support that. But if you cannot solve that problem with just doing one of the 3 Ps, you have to do all 3 of the 3 Ps. And the earlier you are, the better, because the cost of making that type of investment is very easy, I think, because there's not that much established customer base that you have to refactor for that type of experience.
Yeah, and maybe I would just add to that, another thing we didn't mention, but I think is really important now, and I know it's highly debated, is pricing transparency, right? For everyone that sells mid-market or enterprise, the old playbook was you hide that, right? Contact sales. Well, new AI LLMs, they want the information, right? And consumers want the information. Your users want that information. So I see a big trend of companies that are making that much more apparent. It's on their pricing page, all the plans there. And I'm also I know and a lot of companies grapple with this, right? Like we're building our model, we have to have this many sales. I was just helping someone out. Like we have to get to 500,000 ARR. So therefore we have to get at least 10 customers who are selling 50K ARR. Okay, well then we have to like do a sales-led model. And I was like, it doesn't have to work that way, right? And I'm a huge advocate for freemium because I think it allows people to come in, experience value quickly. But the other reason I am is every one of those free users is on your marketing team. Slack, we had 10 million free users. We could have easily said, oh, it's the bandwidth cost, the support costs, make it a free trial, get rid of them. But I always said we need to keep it free because that's 10 million free marketers. That's our growth engine. That's how we go. So again, like these are really important decisions, right? This go-to-market model, how you price, the transparency of the pricing. These are all going to impact long-term growth.
I feel like we need to do a part 2 for pricing and packaging because I'm a huge advocate of that muscle for founders. And I'll just do one quick analogy and then I'll pass it over to Lonnie for the last question. But there's a study in the restaurant business that if you hide, for example, lobster behind I think it's called AD or or market price.
Market rate, yeah.
Nobody asked the question, how much does it cost? Therefore, there's a bunch of lobsters that stood in the back room that weren't sold. But if you actually faked it, even if you lost money, you actually gained money by the storage and just the cost of throwing it away because it's expired. So I think that same analogy is very similar to how you want to distribute your product. Is you have to distribute a knowledge first of like what does it cost, so people can understand like, oh, I actually thought it was more expensive. They show pricing. I'm actually going to go and reach out and see how much this costs for my business. It's very important that you don't have to hide all of your prices. You also don't have to display all of your prices for the plans as well. Maybe just a starter plan or a growth plan, and then you keep the enterprise plan behind a lock and key, for example.
Great panel. I'm at a stage where my product is getting ready and I'm putting together the GTM team. All the topics that you discussed seems to blur the boundaries between marketing, sales, product, CEO. Do you have a recommendation for founders who are in the 0 to 1 journey, who would like to put maybe 2, 3, 4 people team?
I think it ultimately depends on what model you believe in, right? If you're doing an SOG model, it's a very different set of first hires than a POG model, and eventually morph into the PSG, product sales growth type model. So the one thing I would say is like, I'm a big believer in shared metrics. If you do have like marketing and sales, don't give them different metrics, have the same end goal. And again, I think like product sales and marketing, they're all intertwined, right? They should be working together. And that's a relic of old B2B, was like, these are very disparate, separate teams that all have separate metrics that live on different floors of the organization. So yeah, I would say like, think about the model you want to go with first. And then if it is PLG, obviously you're going to bring like an all-purpose go-to-market type maybe marketer that works on the pricing and packaging, that works on the actual product, that works on the virality loops, all the different elements there. It's all going to depend though on which model you choose.
That's a tough one. Everything that Bill said, I agree with. I will speak to sales-led first, and then I'll talk about product-led. So for sales-led, get a data engineer on board, go-to-market engineer, first and foremost. And this is the Clay model. They haven't had, I think Clay might have had sellers this year, just this year, right? So, and Clay is how old? Like 6 years old,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Clay sells middleware. If you guys know what Clay is, check it out. They effectively sell AI middleware. This guy over there knows what Clay is. His company is based on it as an underlying infrastructure. This is the quantum computing guy. And this is what I say to mature startups that I advise, and I have a lot of those folks. And that is, your advantage a year and a half from now, it's not your marketing or selling motions. It's the data you get and how you integrate that into your next level of change. And it's that I don't know, we can claim we created a playbook, but they're sort of struggling with this. Sales is here, marketing is there, and we have different, like, you're rebuilding from the inside out. So for those of you that are just starting, it's such a wonderful place to be. And I say that because there is this incredible case study about the change in infrastructure when it comes to telecom in India in the 90s. And the Indian government, I know there are people here from the subcontinent, was like, how are we going to spend our way out of this problem? Well, cell phone technology came out. And some of the world's best cell infrastructure was created in India. You guys are there now. You get to create that infrastructure. And so go-to-market engineer first and foremost. You can talk to this guy, who knows a few firms, I know a few firms. But you're starting with your data, and then you're starting with, how do I make a motion using something like Clay, and then gather data from it and iterate. Don't hire a seller, please.
That's your job, right? The founders.
That's your job. Bill doesn't agree, but don't hire a seller.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your guys' time here. We're going to have some lunch on the side. Bill and Doug will be available for a few minutes after this. If you have any questions, you can line up. We can see who has a long slide afterwards. All right, thank you, everybody.
Say that. Oh my God.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. I don't know if this Bill guy, I don't know if I'm going to do a part 2 of that.